This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Chevy Lynn Vasky with the K-State Radio Network. K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien kicks off today's show with a grain market update reporting good exports and relatively steady futures and cash markets. Continuing today's show is Shane Tiffany, CEO and owner of Tiffany Cattle Company, as he discusses the value of a mentor and what key points he learned from his. Rounding out today's show is K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond with a weather update, highlighting cooler than normal weather and an outlook on the drought monitor. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we begin our Friday show off with a grain market update from K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien. Daniel, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you very much, Chevy Lynn. Appreciate it.
And Daniel, grain exports have been looking good this week. Can you tell me a little bit more?
Yeah, the main positive news that's come into the market has had to do with pretty strong corn exports this week, back up to about 49 million. Again, that's been a positive for this season. We're coming to the end of the corn marketing year on August 31st, and right now we're sitting at what's bought ahead at about 2.78 billion bushels. USDA projected 2.75. We'll see how this pace finally evens itself out in the next few weeks. But overall, it's been a good marketing year for corn exports. Again, that's come largely because of low prices. So we'll see. And then we also have had a strong export week for U.S. wheat, and that would. And again, we're looking at official numbers for the week ending July 31st. Of course, that marketing year started June 1. And for the overall numbers for the U.S., about 24.5 million bushels, need a pace about 16.4 for this marketing year. Again, the one we're in now, to get to the end and meet the USDA's projection of about 850 million, which is okay. Hard red winter wheat especially had a strong week. Need about 4.96 million bushels, about just under 5, beat the USDA's projection of 275 million, and had a week of 11.5. So strong week. Again, I guess the best cure for low prices is low prices, and a weaker dollar doesn't hurt either in terms of actually moving some of this grain. So that's a positive. I'd say also for soybeans that had a week of actually strongest week for several, of about 25.3 million bushels of shipments, and need a pace of about 25.6 to meet the USDA's projections. Of course, here we're concerned about these paces because of the upcoming USDA WASDE report. It'll be on the 12th of August. So I guess if we're meeting the pace on exports or ahead or behind on other usage, then that could impact where the at least the usage side of the supply-demand balance sheet. I should mention on that report, for the August report, we'll have the first USDA NASS projection for this market year, but it'll only be primarily based on what farmers tell the USDA they expect out in the fields. And August reports are notorious for being, I shouldn't say they're just flat out inaccurate, but they have a wider range of estimates. So the expectations that farmers are giving for what they expect their crops to be, what their yields to be, based on August 1. When we come to September 1, we'll have again another set of farmer expectations will be that much closer to harvest, a little more maturity, and the USDA themselves will also go out in the fields and do what they call the enumerated surveys. So a lot happening in the coming weeks. There was one pre-report estimate that came out from one of our main commercial trading houses. They do a survey of farmers, supplement that with their own analysis. Had an expectation that's quite high, 188 bushels an acre. The USDA's projection is 181. So again, with that 188 figure, I guess I don't know how they weighted acreage in different places, if that's all from right at the heart of the Corn Belt or primarily or whatever. So there's some uncertainty with regard to that. So by the time we get out to the next USDA WASDE report next week, I think believe it's on Thursday. I think it's on the 12th. that there'll be a lot of, anticipation of a large number. And frankly, if we don't come in with a large number, that's probably going to be interpreted positively for the markets. But we'll see. So right now, farmers will be voting with their emails and their iPhones on what they think those numbers will be and how that affects what the USDA NASS tells, brings into those balance sheets on the production side, and then we'll just go from there. I really think that it'll set the tone for where markets go. It's probably going to have large crop expectations for corn and for soybeans, and then we'll be shaving and adjusting from that from August now into September, October, November, and on into January.
Daniel, what are the futures markets looking like?
Well, they're following the same narrative and general idea that we have large crops coming. And closed yesterday on Thursday the 7th at, for corn, at 384.5 on the futures contract. For Dees, harvest contract 407 had been lower this week. So a little bit of strength that happened yesterday. Is that an actual positive move in the market? Is it people that have been selling a long time buying back? We're not quite sure yet. But so the market has its movements and its actions and reactions. It'll pay attention to the supply-demand numbers that come out and increasingly weight that going forward on into this fall. For soybeans, the August contract, of course, is in delivery, in what we call the delivery period. 971 3/4, 974 for September. New crop November 993 and 3/4. Whereas corn was up about 4 or 5 cents yesterday. Soybeans up about 9 or 10, 8, 9, 10. So got that as it is. And then some of the export news, other factors coming into play affecting hard red winter wheat. Again, Chicago CME Kansas hard red winter wheat contract closed the September contract closed up a dime yesterday, 10 cents up to 521.5. So interesting to look at all that. And when I look at where we're at chart-wise, again, you've got the same pattern that just played out for the September corn, September wheat, and September soybean futures contracts. All within the last week dropped to a low and have bounced back a little bit from that. And again, I guess when you look back historically in the last several years, it hasn't been that uncommon at all to see actual price lows happen sometime around August, September, and that's when the market finally puts to bed its view that we're going to have a short crop or drought or a flood or freeze or whatever it could impact things, and that it's a little bit premature, but yet it's the expectation. It kind of lays aside its worries about the size of the crop and then starts thinking about demand. So frankly, for any positiveness to come in the market, it's almost as if the size of the crop news needs to wash out, needs to hit the market, and then we can turn our attention to how the crop's going to be used. And then we're in a better shape to see how what seem to be lower prices may spur on demand all that much more.
Daniel, what about the cash markets?
Cash markets following suit, of course, and we have seen some different area of the state take price leadership for some of these crops. Southeast Kansas is particularly showing strong bids. You have strongest corn price still is in Garden City and Southwest where the feedlots are at, but the second strongest price is in Pittsburgh down Southeast Kansas, or in that vicinity. So both of those have a positive basis for corn, and other places, again, the Colby area, 354, 350 for Salina, 365 Hutchinson, 370 Topeka. Really not showing any worry about users getting supplies. They don't have it now. If they can just wait till harvest comes in, they're anticipating they'll have plenty to buy. In the grain sorghum market, you also have a similar situation. Again, the Pittsburgh area, it's just a few bids, but it's not just isolated one or two. You have a 388 bid in for sorghum, spot cash price bid, new crop bid of 410 again for sorghum, and the new crop corn bid down there was 411. So standing out strongly in the state. Soybeans pretty similar. You have a new crop bid for soybeans at 1004, again in that southeast Kansas area. Well, that's a spot price. New crop's 1003. The next highest prices anywhere, 978 for a spot bid in Topeka. Hutchinson 947. So again, and you have a new ethanol plant down in that area. It's affecting things, and not that far from Emporia. Ethanol soybean crush plant down there too. So local markets, local market outlets, surely having an impact on those things. And for wheat, we're still in the mode of having just gotten through our harvest, adequate supplies as far as the eye can see, at least for a bit, and strongest price recorded in the state for a cash price right now. Again, 526, 4 over in the Pittsburgh area. Next highest, 496 Topeka, 491 in Salina, and those are 26, 31 under, whereas that 526 is 4 over. You see bids like that, and you want to go back and look and make sure that something's reported right, because they really stand out. And then we're looking at new crop bids for next year too. And of course, this is for wheat that's won't even be planted if it's winter wheat until September, October. But the strongest new crop bids right now, again, 587 in the Pittsburgh area, 5 over, and that's over next July's bid. And after that, 523 Salina, 522 Hutchinson, and the like. So just interesting to see one listed bid, 587, strong bid in northwest Kansas. But again, a lot of others are below that. So overall, a market not terribly excited. Did have a little bit of a run-up yesterday. Harvest approaching, pretty subdued in terms of any price excitement. Waiting for something to happen. The WASDE report coming next week. That might bring something about. And really, any surprise that would happen geopolitically or if other crop issues around the world could still shake things up. But right now, it's a situation where the best way to manage this as a farmer is just have lots and lots and lots of bushels. So if you can't have high prices, we hope you have large quantities at least.
Daniel, thanks again for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you very much, Chevy Lynn. Appreciate it.
Again, that was K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien with this week's grain market update. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll have more for you up ahead on this episode of Agriculture Today.
You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing the value of a mentor with CEO and owner of Tiffany Cattle Company, Shane Tiffany. Shane, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Shane, you discussed the value of a mentor here at HPJ Live here in Wichita, Kansas. And first off, what do you see as the value of a mentor?
Yeah, I think that personally I have benefited so much in every area of my life from having people that have went before me or learned different lessons and imparted those onto me. And I think that's especially true in business. And definitely it's a huge part of my brother and my story when it comes to Tiffany Cattle Company. We had a tremendous mentor that helped us every step of the way.
And can you tell us a little bit about that mentor and how you got started with Tiffany Cattle Company?
Yeah, so our mentor, his name was Doug Lau, and he was the owner of that operation. And as he was ending approaching the end of his career, he reached out to us as part of his legacy and asked us if we wanted to come back and buy a feedlot. And obviously we said yes, we'd love to. And then he helped facilitate that. And then, even though that is huge, that opportunity, I think the thing that I'm even more grateful for that he imparted onto us is kind of, how to run a business, how to think strategically, all of those things that we've really benefited from.
And in your presentation here at HPJ Live, you mentioned top 3 rules that Doug has for business, and the first one being you'll have an abundance of whatever you tolerate. And what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that definitely was Doug's number one rule of business, and I think that it not only applies to business, but to every area of our life. I think if you really boil that down, it speaks to culture. So even if it comes to like parenting, if you tolerate backtalk from your children, don't be surprised when you get an abundance of that. If you tolerate employees showing up to work late, don't be surprised if you get an abundance of that. But I think that it's also true of the other thing is, as a leader in an organization, I would say that you'll have an abundance of whatever you give away. So if you only tolerate respect amongst employees or you give a lot of respect away, don't be surprised if that starts to infiltrate every area of your culture. And before you know it, everyone operates in that manner rather than you just telling them how you would like things to be ran.
And what was his second rule?
Yeah, Doug's second rule of business was he told me that one of the most important things and habits that I could develop is to set aside the time to think. He said start every morning of your day, no cell phone, no TV, no newspaper, just with a cup of coffee and sit and think. He said that the difference between the haves and the have-nots typically is that the haves took the time to think about different opportunities, and then when those opportunities came about, they knew what they were going to do, and they were able to act on them in a timely fashion before that opportunity slipped away. And he just challenged us to constantly learn to love to learn. Just be thinkers by nature and take the time and have a top 10 list of different opportunities that may or may not evolve, but what would you do if those opportunities came about? So rule number 2, take the time to think.
And when it comes to those opportunities, is it really thinking through those as why they're on your piece of paper?
Yeah, absolutely. So the top 10 would be the practice that you need to go through is, let's say it's what would happen if that 80 acres beside us ever came up for sale? Well, then think about what bank would I contact? What equipment upgrades would I need to do to farm that many more acres, right? What new fencing would I do? Who would I call? It's thinking about every stage of that opportunity. And I think through that thinking process, it also helps identify if that's something that you really want to do or if maybe that's not an opportunity I should take on. But it's about the thinking.
As this is something Doug told you, is it something you've implemented and see be beneficial for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would tell you that as Tiffany Cattle Company has grown over the last almost 20 years, that's been a fundamental rule that's led to taking advantage of the opportunities that came our way, is that we had a plan of what we would do if this were happen, and so it's not only about the thinking, but it's about training yourself to become much more strategic in your thought process. I think as ag producers, and look, it's applicable all across our society, but I think that we can become consumed in today, and we forget to think about a year and 3 years and 5 years down the road. And I think that it's just about working out that strategic thinking muscle and becoming better about that.
And what was that third and final rule?
Yeah, Doug's third and final rule of business was hope for the best and plan for the worst. And so I think that the planning for the worst is that strategic planning, right? Having a plan of what would we do if this went wrong or this went wrong. I think that's good. I think the thing that we miss oftentimes is the first half of that saying, and that's the hope for the best, right? Agriculture, by its nature, can be challenging. Weather events, market swings, all of those things. And I just think that it's really, really important that as an ag producer or a business leader or in every area of your life is to be positive, be an optimist by nature, expect good things to happen. And I think that change of mindset leads to a change in behavior that can have a tremendous impact for the good in every area.
So when you think about a mentor, what value do you really see it playing in the life you have now and the operation you have?
Yeah, so I think the mindset when you learn to truly value mentors in your life, by nature, it requires you to humble yourself and acknowledge that there are a lot of things that I don't know that I could learn to become better, and then seek those people out. And then that positions yourself to when you hear wisdom spoken, that you're much more willing to take that in. And so it's just about, once again, learning to be a lifelong learner and understanding that other people can bring tremendous value to you in business and on a personal level. And so just be willing to seek that out and humble yourself and receive what it is that they have.
What are some key things to receiving good advice from a mentor?
Yeah, I think that something that I've always heard was God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And so especially when you're meeting with a mentor, I think it's appropriate to ask a question and then shut your mouth and listen And I think so often in a conversation we can fall into the trap of always thinking about the next thing I'm going to say or the point that I want to make. But I think when it comes to a mentor and a mentee relationship, it's that humbling yourself and going in and saying, I want to learn, and so I'm going to keep my mouth shut and listen.
On the flip side of things, what do you think it takes to be a good mentor?
Yeah, I think to be a good mentor, and I have the privilege of having those relationships, I think that it is understanding that you've learned a lot of valuable things in your own journey that other people can benefit from. And I think also whenever I mentor someone else, it's one of those things to where I get as much or more out of it from them that I impart on them themselves, especially when it's a younger person that thinks differently, that grew up in a different age of society, a more technological age. And their ideas, man, they just excite me, and I grow, and it stretches my own perspective. And so I think that mentor-mentee relationship really goes both ways.
So, Shane, we've heard Doug's top 3 things for business. What is your top thing for business?
Yeah, I would just say be humble. Understand that you can always learn. Show up to work every day with a good attitude. Be excited about what you do. And then, try and learn at least one key thing every single day. So humility, and seek out those nuggets of knowledge that you need.
And wrapping it up, if someone's looking for a mentor, is really just needing some advice, what's your recommendation for finding one?
Yeah, I think that we can get really caught up and make that more difficult than it is. I think that look around your community or your industry and see someone that you really respect that's doing some really cool things or that has made it and has achieved a level of success that you aspire to. And pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, could we have lunch together? I've got a lot of questions. Would you be willing to pass some of your wisdom on to me? And I think you'll be surprised at their response.
That was CEO and owner of Tiffany Cattle Company, Shane Tiffany, as he discussed the value of a mentor. Before we cut to a break, I would like to let you know about the upcoming 2025 Ranch Management Field Days from K-State Research and Extension and the Kansas Livestock Association. The first one is taking place August 21st in Wichita County, and the next one a week later on August 28th in Woodson County. If you'd like to find out more information about these ranch management field days, you can do so on ksubeef.org or by going to kla.org. I will also link it in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back.
You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Friday show with a weather update from K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip, have we been seeing some conditions that are cooler than normal for this time of year?
Yeah, we were definitely cool over the weekend. We had temperatures get down into the upper 50s, and that's the coolest we've been since early June, and that's refreshing after some of the heat we've seen over the last several weeks. And high temperatures, they were also on the cool side with barely getting into the mid-70s average temperatures this time of the year. It's anywhere around that 90-degree mark for highs and then to the upper 60s for lows. So we were anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees below average. And that was just for a pretty short period of time. We saw temperatures start to climb after the weekend. Probably the most frustrating thing is we didn't get any moisture with that cold front. And overall, things have been slowly starting to dry out across the state. And we combine that with some of the wind as well. We've had wind gusts up to 30 miles an hour for the last 2 to 3 days. And when we have warm temperatures combined with wind, it really dries things out quickly. And the good news is it kept the heat indices down with some of the heat we've seen thus far. We're going to peak with our heat here today on Friday and on Saturday as well. But, overall, when we look at the grand scheme of things, when we put those kind of combinations together of that wind and the heat and drier conditions, we tend to start drying things out even further. And while we're not going to see heat indices as high as we have seen, because we just don't have that moisture component, we've had a high pressure build in across the region. We're getting that southwest winds that's transporting warmer, drier air into the region, unlike where we saw last month where we had the high pressure oriented a little bit further to the east. That brought some of that Gulf moisture up north and had a lot more humidity with it. So there will be the benefit of dry conditions, or at least drier air, reducing the heat index overall. But man, when we combine that with 15, 16, 17 days without a wetting rain, without a quarter inch of precipitation for a lot of the state, we're start talking about that D word again that not a lot of folks want to mention. And that's good because most of the state, honestly, right now is drought free.
It seems like this drought potential is a bit more localized. Can you explain to me which regions specifically are more likely to experience it?
Yeah, we saw about a 2 to 3% increase in abnormally dry conditions this week. We did see some minor improvements in the Northwest where we had one heavy storm that went through in the Northwest. But overall, drought starting to creep back out in spatial coverage. We're starting to see it get further south. Most of it, the moderate drought right now, sits along the Nebraska border, but we're starting to see that abnormally dry slip further south towards the I-70 corridor, and even start to reappear in portions of the southwest Kansas. And when we average anywhere from about a half inch to 0.8 of an inch of rainfall a week, we need that much to keep up. And so we haven't had that for about 2 weeks now, and we're starting to develop 2 to 3 inch deficits for a lot of the state.
And Chip, is there any kind of precipitation as we look ahead at the forecast?
Yeah, so as we move forward, this heat's going to stick around. It'll give a little bit on Sunday, I think, with cloud cover. We will see some spotty showers and storms Saturday, and then a better chance on Sunday night as we get a cold front that comes through. That will bring some refreshing air, not quite to the capacity that we saw last week, but we'll see temperatures closer to average, not hitting the hundreds like we saw over the last day or two. And then I think those spotty storms, unfortunately, along the cold front are going to be relatively limited in spatial coverage, as well as we're not going to see a lot of rain from them. Right now, it looks like maybe just far northern Kansas and maybe a half inch in some of the heavier cores. But after that, we'll start to see temperatures start to climb again, middle to late next week. And overall dry conditions are favored through the mid-August. And we really need to get some moisture in here to offset it. It's a little too early for the normal time crops. Some of the folks that planted early might be getting it just right, where corn might be starting to dry out, especially in southern parts of the state. But folks that didn't plant early, we still need another rain or two to carry this crop through, and hopefully we can get it in the next couple of weeks.
Chip, thanks again for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Once again, that was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. That's all we have for you today on Friday's show of Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.